Well, a happy Victory Monday to you, even if it is Tuesday, because you know what? When your football team, not mine, wins as an 8.5-point underdog for the first time since 2016, you get to call it whatever day that you want to. Patriots 16, Bengals 10. For the first time this season, we have not only just a film review, but a joyous film review, which you know, if you listen to me on Friday, I did not think was going to come until maybe Halloween. Look at the egg on my face. Great win for the Patriots. This was not an ordinary upset. This was not an ordinary season opening win. It was a whole lot more. I wrote a couple of things after, not only about how the Patriots basically found their formula for the entire season, not that they can do this game after game after game, and especially against good teams, but being in the locker room, how that felt, how it sounded, what it means to this team, new coach, new offensive coordinator, new quarterback, everything, turning the page was massive. So we're going to get into that. We are going to get into the X's and O's. I've got the personnel groupings. I got the stats. I got the play-by-play. I got the rates, the pressures, the everything, the success rates, the efficiencies, whatever you want. It's all right here. We're going to go offense today. We're going to go defense. We're going to hand out some game balls. We're going to talk about what would NFL film say. Everyone's probably lukewarm segment. I like it. I know a couple of you out there like it, where we inspired by this 1995 VHS that I had as a kid and watched endlessly. It's called Unfinished Business. It's about the New England Patriots 1995 season. If they're doing a documentary, which would probably be obviously on Netflix or somewhere else, about this season, what would they say? And we do it week by week by week, trying to guess what that would look like. If you listened last year, it was obviously sad and pathetic. And I joked many times that the documentary makers probably quit by week 11. This season, these fictitious documentary makers are not going to quit. Then we're going to have a new segment, Life on the Beat. I think you might like to know what it's like on a road trip, what we do, who we hang out with, what we see, what we do. And then we will get to your mailbag question. Sound good? All right, ready to break. So the big takeaway right off the top is this. The new era, as we've talked about in New England, is really finally here. What Gerard Mayo did Sunday is achieve two things that Bill Belichick could not over the last 4 years without Tom Brady. Win as a two-score underdog and win a statement game on the road. Gerard did this in his NFL coaching debut. Now, this is not about Belichick, but if you are someone in that locker room listening to Mayo about this is how we're going to win, this is going to be the plan, it's going to work, we're building, but eventually over time this will work, and boom, like that happens right away, you are bought in. That's it. You went on the road as the biggest underdog in week one, something they themselves talked about in the locker room afterward, and won big time. Mayo had the locker room before. He's got it in his palm right now, which is the best thing you can have as a rookie head coach, not to mention everything else that lies ahead, which is probably still a difficult season. This makes it that much easier because he's got proof of concept. He's got buy-in. He's got something. Again, Bill Belichick could not do the last 4 years. 5 times he was an underdog by 8.5 points or more. 0-5. He won once in 2016, Jimmy G on the road against Arizona. They go ahead and pull it out. Brady was suspended. Cool. Before that, he hadn't done this. The Patriots had not done this since 2001, which they did 5 times that year, which is crazy. And also a reminder that how did they do this? Well, they won on defense. You hold Joe Burrow and company to 10 points. You won with your running game. Okay. Rhamondre Stevenson, 120 yards, a lot more on him later. A touchdown. You won with field position, excellent special teams. You won with cunning game plans, which again, we're going to dive into. This was an old school Patriots win to open the new era. This was familiar. And this was the first time, the first signs that we've seen from this team that they might finally get back to those roots. Like how many times in the 2022 season, the Matt Patricia, Joe Judge offense, were we just going, just don't screw this up. Like the penalties, the turnovers, the inexplicable just mental farts that they had on the field all of the time, never getting out to a first quarter lead, right? 2023, all of that's worse, even with a better coaching staff, theoretically, okay? This team right away looks smart, tough, and dependable, and it is one game. I am not projecting anything moving forward, right? This could end up being the worst thing in retrospect that ever happens to them, all this confidence. Gerard Mayo was full of bravado, talking for a full hour to the media this morning, split between WEI and his morning availability via Zoom with us. And that's cool, that's great. But what I'm saying is the signs, the possibilities that they could get back to that smart, tough, honestly clutch play the same way they won at the dawn of the dynasty, they're not relaunching a dynasty, is encouraging. Because much like that team was in 01, this team is going to be an underdog week after week after week. And everyone's going to know the path forward. They're going to know the tightrope you have to walk. run the ball, play defense, play from ahead, find an edge on special teams, turnovers, bounces of the football, like Marcus Jones scooping that at the 1 yard line after Kyle Duggar knocked it out up front at the 2 in the second quarter. That's a touchdown for the Bengals that goes back the other way instead and leads to a Patriots field goal. That's a 10-point swing. That's the stuff that happened back then that defined the Patriots for so long, right? We're smarter, we're tougher, and we get a little bit luckier. That happened Sunday. That's what made this a little bit more special. Not to mention Mayo, again, cultivated that, coached it, and it was a promise kept, which is huge. Which brings me to the locker room. Look, I went in thinking, look, I want to talk to the guys like David Andrews, Hunter Henry. I got a good relationship with them in the first place, so that always makes it easier when you're trying to talk to them and ask questions. But just what did this win mean against the backdrop of those last 2 seasons? And it's not to bring up old shit, which is exactly how I put to them. It's just to say this whole new era is against that backdrop forever. And you could hear a little bit of a release in there. Hunter Henry just said, yeah, last year sucked. We're not going to dwell on it. We had no fun. It sucked. This is great. These are selfless guys winning on the road, winning week 1. This is what Mayo talked about, righting the ship. It happened. Got 16 more to go. And David Andrews is talking like, yeah, I think so, was his answer when I asked, is this healing in any kind of way? For a guy who not only was just at the literal center of all the dysfunction, but having to talk to us at the media every single game last year as they go 4-13. So I highlight them because they had to go through the slog, which made this all the sweeter, right? All the bitterness of the last 2 years. But there's also something to be said for just the damn noise I heard waiting outside the locker room before I got in. They do the whole, oh yeah, right? That you've heard and maybe even seen on social media since. That was the loudest noise I've heard out of a locker room in I don't know how long. And when I got inside, it was maybe the happiest since 2018, which by now, what are we, like 7 minutes in? You're probably thinking like, did you leave the stadium, Callahan, with a bag of cash to just kind of exaggerate all of this stuff? No, this is what it felt like in the moment. This was a moment that can stand on its own. Even if they go 1-16, you'll have this that you could hold on to. It was both the start of something new in a moment unto itself, because that's what they felt in there. And so there were good locker rooms, don't get me wrong, in 2021, especially that road win in Buffalo. But it was like a weight lifted. It was a joy rediscovered. It was validation. It was, okay, we might be able to do this. And who knows, again, how far they take it forward. It was one win, but not all wins are claimed equally, made equally. This had some oomph, right? The history gave it meaning, and that's what made it against Sweden. You could feel it. You could hear it in that locker room. Okay, let's get to the X's and O's. But first, Patriots are playing at home this week. And I've told you this before. I get to go to the games. It's the greatest perk of the job. I get to go for free. Well, I have to work these games in the press box. But if you want to go, if you want to join me at Gillette Stadium, I'm going to tell you to go to Gametime for a couple of very simple reasons. Number one, there is a lowest price guarantee at Gametime when you buy tickets to any game or concert. And if you find a lower price elsewhere, they guarantee you 110% of the difference. They also skip the BS. I'm talking about the late fees, the kind of adjustments at the end, or the taxes for things you never heard of. No, this is all in pricing right up front. Pesky fees be damned. And you get to see your seat view. So if you're kind of weighing section 306, row 13, seat whatever, versus I'd rather go to like 314, maybe drop down to 202. Is it worth the jump in price? You can look from that seat as if you were in Foxboro to see what that view would be with Gametime. So go to Gametime, use Gametime Picks, which filters out all the fluff. It only shows you incredible deals and great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching for thousands and thousands of tickets. You can go to Pat's Seahawks if you want. Week 2, it's going to be a great environment. So download the Gametime app today, create an account, and use code CLNS. That's it, CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Just create an account, redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? You know it. Gametime. All right, offense. So this is pretty simple, right? You watched it. I was there. You didn't need to be in the press box or even in the stadium to know what was going on. This plan was pound the rock, kill the clock. And that was it. Patriots had 34 minutes in time of possession. That was the 5th highest in week 1. They ran the ball on 76% of their first downs, including the last 10 of the entire game. So Alex Van Pelt was trying to sit on the ball and let the air out, basically when they had a lead in the mid-third quarter. We'll get to that in a second. It's too conservative for me, but whatever. Here's the thing. They did it. All right. And their best weapon was not Rhamondre Stevenson, who, again, we'll get to in a second. He was the best player in the field. But it was this 6 offensive line grouping that they used with 12 personnel and 13 personnel, meaning Caden Wallace, who came in as the extra O lineman every single time, was either second or third tight end on the field. When I go through the success rates for all of their personnel groupings, which they only use 11, 12, or 13, most of them are around like 45 to 50. These are like good, not great success rates, meaning how often do you stay on schedule? Get the yards you need to go from 1st and 10 to 2nd or 6 or better, go to 3rd and 3. You know the deal. Those were okay. When they played with a 6 offensive lineman, that success rate was not 45. It was not 50. It was not 60. It was not 65. It was over 70% of the time, meaning the Patriots got what they wanted whenever they beefed up, looked at Cincinnati and said, I'm running this down your throat, which they did, as you know, at the end, going for 5 yards, 9 yards, 3 yards, and 9 more, all behind those groupings to beat the Bengals and run out the last 2 minutes and 13 seconds. Now, there were some adjustments in and outside. We talked about this before. Patriots are going to be an outside zone-based run offense. All the offensive linemen going in unison to one direction or the other, kind of running parallel to the line of scrimmage. Some double teams, and they move up to the second level. Running back goes, okay, I'm following the blocking, one cut and go. Cincy's defense widened out in the middle quarters and outflanked that outside zone. So as they were going horizontal, the Bengals were already kind of camped out and be like, yeah, that's cool. I'm going to set the edge here, and now you have nowhere to go. So they pivoted. First or second drive of the third quarter, Patriots run power twice, which they had not done. These are man-blocked runs. You can usually see them with a pulling guard. They also ran duo, which is power without a pulling guard. Duo stands for 2 double teams you get up front. It's very close to inside zone. But the point is, these are more downhill. Okay, we're coming at you. We're not going horizontal to the line of scrimmage. We're coming straight down your throats. And they did this not only on Rhamondre Stevenson's touchdown, but mixed in towards the end of the game, running it at the Bengals. Now, you can say, hey, Callahan, that's cool that they made these adjustments and you explained duo, but they only scored 6 points. And you know what? You're right. That's all they had. And that is where I get into the conservative play calling, where the Patriots did run the clock out. They did score enough points to win, but one offensive touchdown is not going to win many games in the National Football League, which again, you know I'm serious because I spelled it out instead of NFL. They needed to pass the ball a little bit more. They did not have a great passing plan for a defense that blitzed just twice, right? They only threw one screen. They only ran play action 17% of the time, which is low for an Alex Van Pelt offense. So I think they could have spiced it up a little bit more. Again, the last 10 first down plays that they had, run. Okay. One little boot. They didn't have a lot of success in the boots, but something to spice that up, I think, could have turned their field goal drives in the second half, one of which was only started at the Cincinnati's 24-yard line, maybe into a touchdown drive and obviously kind of blown out Cincinnati. They didn't. They still won. That's fine. And this is the other reason behind that. Rhamondre Stevenson. Spoiler alert, he's getting a game ball. 120 yards, a touchdown, 25 carries. He had touches on more than half of his snaps, 28 out of 51. So it wasn't flip a coin every time he's on the field, he's going to get the ball. No, these odds were better than that. The more impressive number, though, is not the ones that I just listed. It's this. And you might have heard this already. 118. That is his yards after contact, according to Pro Football Focus. Meaning from the moment he was touched on any given play, he got over 100 yards after against the Bengals. Now, this kind of counteracts some of the hype that Gerard Mayo was giving the offensive line, being like, oh, I told you. Media was making too big of a deal about the preseason games and the one practice against the Eagles, and they really dominated. To which I would say, Rhamondre bailed you out. There's the number, 118 yards after contact. And 2 of the offensive linemen were great. Mike Onwenu, David Andrews, absolutely kicked some ass, both of them on the touchdown run with Layden Robinson. But they also didn't give up a single pressure. And this is where I kind of draw the line, because part of the reason the Patriots only threw for 121 yards, as I mentioned, more of a limited menu, you're trying to run the ball, was they didn't have good pass protection. And this is where I go, it's important to make the distinction of how the offensive line played between how they run blocked and how they pass protected. That's really not being discussed generally. And it's not like a very nerdy or like detailed point to make. This doesn't make me a genius. I'm just saying there's a very, very important distinction, right? Because they did a decent enough job run blocking. They did not pass protecting. because they allowed pressure on 44% of their snaps against a defense that blitzed twice. And on 25% of Jacoby Brissett's dropbacks, he got hit. So that's not good enough. So if it wasn't Mike Onwenu and it wasn't David Andrews, who was it? Well, Lane Robinson, the Patriots think is going to be a special player. I'm telling you, I think he should have started. He finally did. Congrats to everybody. He gave up 3 pressures. So did Chuks Okorafor, who lasted all of a dozen snaps. They got benched at the end of the first quarter. Enter Vidarian Lowe, everyone's favorite pinata. He ended up giving up 4. Obviously not good, but mostly to Trey Hendrickson. And we know he wasn't 100% because he was on the injury report and missed basically the previous 2 weeks of practice until last Wednesday. So I'm going to give him a pass. So that's where a lot of the pressure came from. We're not only distincting, but drawing a line between run blocking and pass protection, which is obvious, but somehow being missed in the discourse. We need to look at the offensive linemen who are performing and those who are not. Between them, the left tackles, Lane Robinson and David Andrews, is also Michael Jordan. Practice squad player because he was one of the 4 players who got cut on cut down day to make room for their waiver claims. He only gave up 1 pressure. His run blocking to me was so-so. I think we'll wait and see what his career holds. I think that's fair. Guy's not even on the roster. He's on the practice squad. But he played every single snap, as did everyone who was not named Chuks Okorafor or Vidarian Lowe. So it's a mixed bag, and that's fine. But again, 44% pressure rate allowed, 25% of the dropbacks allowed a quarterback hit. You can't have it. That will get a quarterback killed over the course of the season. The reason Jacoby Brissett was not killed is because he got rid of the ball. He only got sacked once, and that was a minus 1 yard sack where he goes 3 feet further on what was essentially a scramble. They'd have no sacks. Anyway, 1 for minus 1 yard is fine. He also scrambled 4 other times for 36 yards, and these were massive. Now, I'm not going to go over the top for a guy who was 15 to 24 for 121 yards and an adjusted completion percentage of 68%, meaning he just put the ball where he should have 2/3 of the time. But he did what he needed to do, right? He was a game manager. Aside from that near pick to Hunter Henry in the end zone near the end of the first half, protected the ball. These are good things. The Patriots just need a stabilizer at quarterback. Jacoby Brissett is not often going to drive winning, make plays that lead directly to victory, but he can ride shotgun, and that's what he did. And instead, last year, Mac Jones and Bailey Zappi were riding shotgun and then peeing themselves, so everyone had to turn over, and sometimes you had to go back home and couldn't move forward to get a win, which the defense wanted to do and should have the 3 times they held their opponents in the middle of the season to 10 points or less. But we're moving forward. No one is peeing themselves right now in this podcast. We are going forward, all of which is to say Brissett was fine. He did enough. He did what was expected, which leaves us only with the receivers and the tight ends. Boring day for both. Right? Again, 121 passing yards. No one's breaking out. No one's starring. The top 4 receivers, KJ Osborne, Tyquan Thornton, Demario Douglas, and Jalen Polk, all played between 35 to 40 snaps. KJ Osborne had 6 targets, which was at least double all of the other receivers in this room. And Brissett really likes him, not only because of that total number, but because when you look at those targets, 4 were on 3rd down and 1 was in the red zone. So critical situations, where can I go? Who do I trust? He was the guy I thought Demario Douglas would be, as we talked last week on my Prize Picks. Demario Douglas, meanwhile, 2 catches, 12 yards. The first he beat man coverage on a 9-yard shallow cross. It's regular drag route. Everyone runs them. But overall, that catch and his other one contributed to an overall stat line. This is the most encouraging stat, I would say, for the passing attack on a day that, again, 121 yards, not a huge deal. The Patriots were 7 of 10 for 62 yards versus man coverage. Again, just 62 yards, but 7 of 10 is a huge number for the league's worst offense against man-to-man coverage. Has the worst receivers when it comes down to the simplest thing of just separate. Can you separate? Can you get open? They did against Cincinnati, who, again, did not blitz, played a ton of zone. They got a little creative with their pressures, and Patriots got a nice day from their tight ends. Austin Hooper had a big catch against man coverage. So some encouraging things there. I think the Patriots need to get more aggressive on 1st down with their pass rate. You need to feed the ball more to Demario and Douglas. And I think you need to help the offensive linemen who obviously needed help. That meant pulling a core for and playing Vidarian Lowe. But Layden Robinson, we know he's a run blocking prospect. He was. Now he's a run blocking player in the NFL. I've compared him to Shaq Mason. He's following that trajectory for now. We'll see where it goes moving forward. But just things to keep in mind as we move forward. This was a good winning game plan. They executed it. Pound the rock, killed the clock. They did it What they did not do, though, however, before we get to defense, is fulfill my Demario Douglas more than 36.5 receiving yards, which was my Prize Picks last week. And I would encourage you to go to Prize Picks where you can make money. I might not. And I did an episode last month or a couple of weeks ago about how you guys can survive the season. And I forgot to tell you, in addition to banking on an upset, which we already got 1 for 1, and watching the young players and this and that, you should play Prize Picks because, look, this is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app, right? It's you against the numbers. It's the simplest, fastest way to win money while you watch sports. You pick more or you pick less on 2 or more stat projections. They give you a player, a stat, if you think he'll get more or less than whatever it might be. If you're right, you win. And that's it. And it could be Pop Douglas catches. It could be Rhamondre Stevenson rushing yards. It could be Drake May in time passing yards, or Evan McPherson for the Bengals, who I thought would hit 2 field goals because the Patriots would stop them. You only got 1. Look at me. But when you win, Prize Picks lets you win up to 100 times your money with as few as 4 correct picks. And it's the only real money daily fantasy platform with an injury insurance policy, meaning if you have a lineup and someone gets hurt, no problem. Your lineup is still intact even if a player leaves in the first half and doesn't return. I've used Prize Picks before. I've told you on the Red Sox, NBA games. Nothing spices up a late night on the couch. Nothing else going on than playing Prize Picks. So download Prize Picks today and play it on a great day, a football Sunday. Use code CLNS for $50. 50 instantly when you just play $5. That's code CLNS on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game. Okay, to the defense. So I love this game plan. It was a throwback to what they did a lot against Joe Burrow in 2022 when you had banged up corners. You had Marcus Jones playing on the outside at all 5'8", looking up at T. Higgins like a kid who's in 5th grade, being picked on by the 8th grader, the freshman versus the senior, pick your metaphor. And what they did was they kept spinning the dial like they did then with a ton of cover 2, which was out of character for the Patriots back then. This used to be a single high man-based defense. Bill Belichick wants to play man across the board. They'll mix in some combination coverages, but that's what they were. More than any other team in the league, single high man coverage. So what they did against the Bengals was instead live out of not only just 2 deep safeties, but filled it out with more zone coverage. They played zone on over 60% of their coverage snaps. And underneath that, blitz just 15% of the time. And when they did blitz, which we'll get this out of the way now, it wasn't often. 5 times. The Bengals averaged 3 yards per play, and they had a 20% success rate, meaning just one of those plays did they stay on schedule. So good job for DeMarcus Covington, sticking to a largely effective game plan, but sprinkling, just a little sprinkle of some extra pressure, which, as I just told you, panned out. But the big thing was the 2 high coverage. Now, again, this is a big structural pivot for the Patriots anyway. They also use some cover 6, which they hardly ever play, meaning you've got 2 players who are responsible for a deep quarter and another deep quarter on one half, and then another playing a deep half on the opposite side. So quarter, half, that's cover 6. And what this did was discourage Joe Burrow from looking deep, right? This is what you want to do. The Patriots played this a ton on early downs, like a weird amount on early downs. 1st and 10, cover 2. 2nd and 6, cover 2. It didn't matter. Cover 6 again was in there. And they couldn't march the length of the field because, of course, when Joe Burrow's not looking deep, he's checking down underneath. And that's what he was. He was a check down Charlie. Let's find the real numbers right here. Joe Burrow, 21 to 29, 164 yards. So his passer rating was 86, no touchdowns, no picks. He had just about the same average as Jacoby Brissett on a per completion basis. And they didn't really get any pressure on him, by the way. This was not like, oh, I'm overwhelmed, I need to get rid of it. The Patriots pressured him about 20% of the time, which is below average. But the way that they disguised that coverage, the way they spun into cover 2 and in cover 6 with these different disguises. And if you watch on YouTube, I actually talked to Tayler Kyles in the press box after. I said, hey, you and I you should collab, and anyone else at CLNS, about doing some of these video diagrams. And we'll explain this and we'll get into it because it's really interesting the way that the Patriots, it sounds like I'm saying, oh, they just played cover 2 and they played cover 6 and that was it. No. They rotated players' alignment pre-snap all the time and then switched assignments post-snap. So the picture was different on the front end. And then you had players doing different things post-snap on the back end. So if you're Joe Burrow, of course you're checking it down because you have no idea sometimes, not all the time, he's a smart guy, obviously a great quarterback, What's going on here? And the one player who embodied this the most was Christian Gonzalez, who you, again, probably know by now, shadowed Jamar Chase. Okay, according to ESPN, on 20 out of 28 routes that Jamar Chase ran, Christian Gonzalez was his primary defender. And my guy, Doug Kide, your friend, allowed 3 catches on these routes for 15 yards. So, big victory for Christian Gonzalez. But it was not always a man-to-man the way that you used to watch Stephon Gilmore lock up whomever, the number 1 receiver in 19. I've got him, shadows him all over the field. Now, this is not an entirely new wrinkle because in 2020, as I tweeted today or retweeted today, they would have Steph shadow week 4. They play Kansas City, Tyreek Hill, who goes into the slot, and then they drop out into cover 2. And instead of playing a short zone, Steph is running the pole, as they say, which is this deep zone down the middle to cover the space between the 2 deep safeties. This is where teams love to attack cover 2. Okay, it's a very well-known, easy space to target and attack. Christian Gonzalez did this. He ran the pole down the middle. He also, from the slot with Jamar Chase, spun to play safety in the deep half. So when you have this guy shadowing your star receiver all over the formation, and you don't know if he's playing man, you don't know if he's going to go down the middle, you don't know if he's going to be in a deep half, maybe he's just in the flat, it creates confusion. And the fact that the Patriots could do this in week 1 with all of the disguise and the changing of the assignments and the changing of the alignment, not to mention sprinkling in a little bit of pressure, to me said they're in mid-season form. This was excellent defense. Even if Burrow's a little affected by the wrist, even if Chase was a little bit limited, T. Higgins was out, we all know, we all get it. That's a more talented offense than the one they've seen all summer, save for one practice against the Eagles. And they balled out. Now, it's not like they didn't play man coverage. I told you over 60% of the time, but it was pretty close to 40 that they did play man. When they played man coverage, so let's say they want to just have Christian Gonzalez turn into Stephon Gilmore. These numbers should be encouraging. 4 of 12 for 41 yards and 2 sacks around a defensive pass interference penalty. That was Joe Burrow against the Patriots man-to-man coverage. Now, I mentioned they didn't get a ton of pressure. When they did, underneath Keon White, 2.5 sacks. Had a hurry. Josh Uche, 2 hurries. Juwan Bentley, half sack. Dietrich Wise, a hurry. That was it. Johnny Tavai had a run stuff. He had a pass deflection. John Jones and Kyle Duggar also had pass deflections. Kyle Duggar, of course, with the forced fumble. Play the game, 10-point swing ultimately. That's what we saw. Again, the game plan to me was most impressive, but it takes the players, the experience, the understanding, the smarts to pull it off. The Patriots have all of that. We saw it. So hat tip to them, hat tap to DeMarcus Covington. I cannot wait to get in the locker room Wednesday and start talking to these guys. I mean, like, you're really playing cover 6 now. You're one of these 2 high, deep zone safety, 2 deep safety zone teams that are going to rotate and do all these different things. I'm sure we haven't seen the half of it yet, but this was encouraging, not just because of the results, but because of the very complex, detailed process that obviously worked on Sunday. Special teams really quick. This was one of the best performances they've had in years, full stop, which is funny when you remember that they started on an illegal formation penalty. Del Pettis, flag out. Welcome to the league, undrafted rookie. After that, Joe Cardona forced a fumble as a long snapper. Joey Sly was 3 of 3. He did something Chad Ryland did once all of last year, which is make all of his field goals when he attempted at least 3 in a game. Bryce Behringer dropped 3 of his 5 punts inside the 20-yard line. And the punt team finished with a very cool 46.5 yards net average. Meaning whatever they lined up to punt, on average, you just moved half the field. They just pushed the Bengals back. Like, you can get a little return, but odds are, given how far this punt is going to go, and given Brendan Schooler, according to Next Gen Stats, ran 22.6 miles per hour in punt coverage, you're just not going to get very far. And they didn't. So Schooler also had 3 tackles. Shouts to him. Let's go to game balls. Rhamondre Stevenson, again, 120 yards. Great number. 118 yards after contact. The second high of his career, according to PFF. Much better number. Insane number. Helped by the fact that he had 10 tackles that he forced misses or just straight broke through, which you saw right there at the end. Dude gets met by Geno Stone, safety at the line of scrimmage on the last handoff. And he goes for 9 yards more. It's the last thing I tweeted before I started recording this podcast. You can find it and see it there. DeMarcus Covington, game ball. Love the game plan. Christian Gonzalez. I get it. Chase is not himself, but you give up 3 catches for 15 yards. And you're the primary defender, one of the best receivers in the league. Hats off to you. Keon White, 2.5 sacks. The one real sack that I loved, because he also got pushed over on the touchdown run the Patriots allowed. I'm not so worried about the Patriots' run defense that drives proclaiming today, like, oh, we're always going to have a run defense. I don't know. You've been the head coach for 1 week, and I get the history, and you were part of it as a player and as a coach, but maybe see how the season goes because Daniel Akawale got also pushed around a little bit late. Anyway, Keon White had this awesome sack working against Alex Kappa, the left guard for the Bengals. Long arm, just straight into his chest, pushed him back, dropped Joe Burrow like a sack of dirt, and that was it. We just had a text, and that says, "Oh, time for what would NFL film say?" So here it is. What would NFL film say? You get all of the contrast between Mayo and Belichick. You get definitely some clip from the media being like, "Oh, the offensive line's in trouble, and we don't really know what it's going to look like." Hopefully, it's from this podcast, this fictitious documentary as we build this along. But then, boom, right away, you get Rhamondre Stevenson through the hole. Boom, you get a spin move. Boom, there's Michael Wenu making 2 blocks on the way to a touchdown. Patriots get the lead. They get another field goal at the half. Of course, you cut to like the near comeback for the Bengals. Joe Burrow makes a throw. They hand it off. The crowd comes to life. But the Patriots answer with a field goal, and you see them hold on to the same way. And they come back to Rhamondre Stevenson spinning. You get the slow-mo, the dramatic music, cut to them kneeling the clock out, Gatorade bath for Gerard Mayo. Mayo saying, "I'm nothing without the players post-game." But, of course, you get the big, "Oh, yeah." And maybe, just maybe, a reminder that the Patriots' first win in the Robert Kraft era was in Cincinnati. And the Patriots' first win in their first Super Bowl season, well, it was not at Cincinnati, but the first game was in Cincinnati in 2001. So, great season opener, some parallels to history. We'll leave it at that and the fictitious documentary makers. Life on the beat. All right. This is small stuff, but again, I think you might have some interest, and then we'll get to the mailbag and get out of here. So Doug and I flew out midday Saturday and show up at the gate. Dan Roach is on our flight. Mike Reese, Cole Yang, Chad Graff, got a couple camera guys. It's like 30% of the beat. Chit chat, hang out, things are good. Especially for me, even though I was finishing my story for Sunday, which is about DeMarcus Covington. Changing the defense in a way that didn't come through, as you just talked about. 20% blitz rate doesn't really align with super aggressive, but Duggar and John Jones telling me you'll know it when you see it. I think it might be more than too high. But anyway, I may or may not have gone after it just a tad too hard the night before. So the laughter was good. Getting the flight to Cincinnati, smooth. Doug and I get a rental car. We stayed in Covington, Kentucky, which is just across the Ohio River. And if you remember, because he shouted this out, and I'd completely forgotten about it, the Bengals Hard Knocks from a couple years ago where they always zoomed in on the bubble. You could see a rusty bridge and then one that was always used. We're just on the opposite side of that. Like you're seeing the bubble, both bridges, there's a city downtown. I naturally want to hang out for a little bit, just chill. So we watched Notre Dame, Northern Illinois, and I'm also texting with James White because it turns out he was calling the game for, I think it was the USA Radio Network, and you're going to hear him on this podcast in a couple weeks. So we're catching up, going back and forth. He says he's calling the game, and he's also been working with Northern Illinois for a little bit. So I'm watching the game, recovering, and I'm like, they're hanging in. Okay, now they're winning. Okay, they gave up the lead. They're still hanging around. Then they beat Notre Dame, top 5 on the road. So we're going back and forth. He's going to come in, supposed to meet up that night. Quick workout, get some food, ready to go for the night. So we go out with Chris Mason and Mark Daniels and Mass Live. We're proof that, when we tell you that, like, we're all friends on this beat. We got like a really good group of people. This is an example. Awesome Mexican place. I think it was called Crown and Cantina. And you step in and you just know, like, okay, they know what they're doing here. Like, this is quality food, well-run kitchen, professional operation. Get a couple of tacos, some margs, go downtown. There's this place called Arnold's, which we just kind of walked into, that has been around since 1867. And it was honestly just the bar that was closest to us. So we're looking for like a chilled night. It's a 1 p.m. game the next day, obviously. And so we sit, here's some horns coming from around the corner. This is very old, like worn wooden bar, seats, everything. You look around, older pictures. And turns out they have a courtyard around the corner. So we pop in. They've got this live jazz band playing all New Orleans style jazz. And it's like an hour in there. Awesome venue. Turns out this place used to be not a speakeasy, but it was around in the Prohibition and built out to a restaurant, family owned, run, everything. And they still have a tub upstairs, which is now supposedly a gin bathtub. I don't know what that means. I don't know if I want to know what that means. Anyway, if you're in Cincinnati, incredible liquor list, beer menu, great vibes, good music. You should stop in. So we leave there, go hang out around the ballpark, because where the Reds play when the Bengals are is right on the river. So basically, again, in line from our hotel, just to check out kind of the bar scene. Doug had some friends when he was at PFF who lived and worked in Cincinnati because that's where PFF's headquarters are actually at. So they recommend a couple places. We end up not anywhere on that list, but at a rooftop bar at AC Hotel Marriott that's right across from where the Reds play. Stand up there, chat about football for an hour, and call it a night around midnight. And so get up, another workout in the morning, go to the stadium around like 10:30. I remember this press box 5 years ago because you know by now. Big Diet Mountain Dew guy here. Only press box in the league, as far as I know, that has it on fountain. So I'm very excited. Filling it up, click, glass, or not glass, ice every time we can. Game starts, cover it, a little cramped in there. Awesome locker room. Talked about it there. We worked till like 7:30 or 8. Went back to the hotel. I'm still starting on film and the personnel groupings and averages and this and that. And we go to bed probably around 1 because I'd done TV with NBC, which is always a weird ask at the hotel desk, being like, hey, I need a conference room at midnight for it to be clear and closed and quiet. Can we swing this? And I'm like, what do you do? That's not TV, but it's via Zoom and it's a Sunday night and it's going to be Monday morning. Sure. I've never had someone try to charge me with Mason and Mark were telling us that someone did that in Dallas last year for them to record a podcast. Anyway, after doing that Sports Sunday with NBC, again, get to bed, 12:30, 1 o'clock, wake up, more film, doing this on the flight there, and just a good trip. So not a ton of detail in there, but I feel like some folks might be curious about what it's like. There are bigger cities, I will say, that we go to, or there's more to do, or with bigger groups that will be more exciting than this tale. But every trip that we take on the road, you'll get a little bit from me. I did like Cincinnati, though. I hadn't been there for, 5 years ago since the Patriots last played. And then I went when I was in college and did a ballpark tour with my dad and a buddy of mine. Actually snuck into the Bengals stadium. And then University of Cincinnati's athletic headquarters. That's a story for another day. So anyway, reminiscing on that. Felt like a blend of Pittsburgh and Indianapolis. But that's enough of the travels. Let's get to mailbag questions and get out of here. We have 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's start with Mark. Will the Pats get the number 1 seed or the number 2 seed? I love this. How about the number 4 seed? AFC East beats itself up. They squeak in at 9 and 8. Kidding. Look, my long-term outlook on this team has not changed. I told you they would beat a good team, a future playoff team, even if they finish with the number 1 overall pick. Maybe it's Cincinnati, maybe it's not, but I still see them as a 4 to 5 win team because I'm just not banking on a long snapper causing a fumble every single Sunday, or you not committing any turnovers and the offensive line giving a pressure rate of 44%, you hang it and win, not being in anybody's parade. But there's stuff here that's not necessarily sustainable, which brings us to the next question. This is a great one from Casey. What worked against the Bengals that can work all season long? And what worked against the Bengals that will have to evolve moving forward? So 2 parts, one of which we're going to dive into more at the end of this week. I've got a great guest, first-time guest, and there's a small chance we have to reschedule, but if so, we'll bring him back a little bit later. And we'll talk about the sustainability part, because it's really the question to ask weeks 1, 2, and 3, and honestly sometimes 4, because if you wanted to believe and they win, you're sold, right? Like, we're all confirming our priors. If you think this team sinks and it gets blown out by whatever, you're done. The season's over, cooked. You're betting against that team. You were right. I'm just saying sit tight and wait. So to your question, I'm super curious of what worked against the Bengals. Like, I think long-term they can give good quarterbacks fits in a way that you haven't seen a whole lot in the last 4 or 5 years, even when the defense has been really good. Is it because they play more 2 high structures? They make teams earn it, a lot of spin the dial stuff. We'll see. Again, I don't think that they can, do this all of the time, because they're going to need more pass rush, right? And you'll run into teams that run the ball better. So if you're sitting back in the 2 high safeties, that's a light box, and teams that can run the ball better than the Bengals will be like, yeah, we'll take 5 yards to carry. The other part I would think about is too, there are teams that are more willing to throw the ball underneath, right? And if they get an early lead, then you can't run the ball. So there are things like the run game that I think the Patriots want to lean into. But to your point about what will have to evolve, they're going to have to attack downfield. And I think they will. Because the other thing I told you a lot this summer is the Browns under AVP, Kevin Stefanski, Alex Van Pelt, led the league in intended air yards last year. They were throwing it deep with 5 quarterbacks more than anybody else in the league, and covered more yards through the air with all of those passes. So they will need more pass rush. They will need to attack more downfield. I think they will. But as far as, playing clean football, having more of a run focus, spinning the dial on defense, making quarterbacks earn it, some of that stuff I think is a little bit more sustainable, but we'll see. Jaeger, speaking of AVP, will AVP open up the offense more in game 2, or will he stick to his conservative approach. Again, another good question. I hope that he does open this up. It will depend on the game script, right? You're down 10-0, or even worse than that, especially in the second half. You need to throw a little bit more. I think they're going to try to sit on the ball, maybe not from the mid third quarter on again when their last 10 first down plays were all runs. But again, this is a play action, big play passing offense. 17% is going to be low when we look back at all the games this season. So they do need the O-line to settle. I think they want to know how teams attack them. Cincinnati had the last, 5-6 months since the schedule was announced, and they decided 4-man rush, a lot of zone. That'll do it for us. And it did to a degree. So they need to, again, settle in and get that pressure rate down. But for him, if Rhamondre Stevenson is playing like one of the best backs in the league, and that's what he was on Sunday, you ride that guy as long as you can. And hopefully it's for 17 games. Hopefully he doesn't break down, but they're going to find out. So he will open it up, but I don't know if it's in the way of like, let's go empty, 5 wide, chuck it deep. They'll get deep, but it will still look like a shell of the offense that you saw on Sunday. Last question. This comes from Ed. A long time, Ed. You used to mailbag all the time. What was surprising to see out of the Pats against the Bengals? Well, how about a win, right? Like, let's start there. Second thing, to throw for 121 yards and win. And then again, the long snapper forcing a fumble. Only 2 catches out of Pop Douglas. Again, apologies to anyone who used the Prize Picks, but we're going to keep making more Prize Picks and bounce back later this week. I'll also just say, I don't know, just the levity of the locker room. Like, I come back to it. This is a game in a moment that will be able to stand on its own. And I didn't expect that. This is supposed to be the start of something new, a season, an era, a coaching staff, a team learning about itself. And you can keep that win in a time capsule and be like, that was awesome. Remember that, and sit around a fire or some beers or whatever years from now and be like, that was a cool win. That felt good. And I didn't expect that. Probably because we haven't had many of those games to either cover or enjoy for you at home with the Patriots as of late. But it's a new era. They're 1-0. And I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please let me know. Again, ratings and reviews always help. You hear me say this a lot, but it's sincere. And look, I know there are episodes that are some better than others. So if you think the same way, things you like, the 4-minute drills we're going to keep rocking with. We're going to have more players, new guests. Again, Friday, big one coming up. James White is going to come on, I think, in a couple weeks after that. Let me know. Email me. Drop it on Apple. Drop it on Spotify. It really, really helps. Until then, I will see you later this week. Enjoy your Victory Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. You get to stretch this all week, baby. And thank you for listening, as always.